What if your next breakthrough isn't behind a wall? It's behind a break. And by break, I should clarify, I do mean like actually taking a break. I remember making one post very early in my small business career that I am still kind of embarrassed about. So this was like on a Wednesday afternoon, and I remember like adding up all the hours that I'd already worked that week and making a post on Wednesday afternoon about how, hey, I've already worked 36 hours this week. How about you? And I remember like doing this because I felt like I needed to not be so alone in how miserable I was. The problem is that in the small business world, we have this rather damaging mindset that has gotten like traction, that if you're not successful, it's because you're not pushing hard enough. And so you need to be pushing harder and harder. You need to hustle more. You need to 10x everything, including the amount of effort you're putting in. Well, the problem is most of us are already putting in a pretty solid amount of effort. And so when we try to 10x that, we basically try to kill ourselves. And this is incredibly prevalent across the board. Everyone tends to lean into, if things are going wrong, I just need to work harder. Everything tends to lean into, if I'm not where I thought I was supposed to be, which is always further than was even remotely feasible because that's how our brains work, then we blame ourselves for not being there. But one of the most important lessons that I've learned again and again and again, and is science backed, is that strategic pauses and retreats unlock growth, they unlock focus, they unlock creativity. They allow us to do more with less, which really is our ultimate goal constantly. We just tend to lose sight of that in the push harder, push harder, push harder. So what happens when we actually take space to rest and reset and relax just a little bit from a neurobiology standpoint? And just to clarify, I know most of this channel is for the ADHD brain, but this is actually pretty solid for both ADHD as well as other neurodivergencies and neurotypical brains. So when our brain has space, when our bodies are able to relax, we are able to get all of the nutrients that we need, which means the whole brain is able to light up, which means we are able to be more risk tolerant. We can take on risks. We can collaborate better. We are able to lean into the creative sides of our brain. When we're stressed, when we're pushing harder and harder and harder, our brains start shutting down higher level functions like creativity. Creativity is what allows us to tackle problem solving. It allows us to come up with ways to move ourselves and our businesses forward. When we're burnt out, we can't do that. And we burn out, not necessarily from working harder and harder and harder, although that's part of it, but oftentimes we burn out because we never step back to see the big picture. You wanna know how important this is? Stephen Kotler wrote an entire book on it. And the concept of flow state, this idea of being in that super high performing state that we're all constantly striving to achieve, cannot be achieved unless we go through the rest state too. It's part of the cycle. Athletes know this. They know that yes, when they're in training, they have to push, but especially leading up to a big push or a performance, there has to be rest cycle included in there too. If they just spent 24 hours at the gym, they would never grow. They would actually probably end up dead at some point because that's just not sustainable. Your body knows this, but we just don't apply it in business. There's 3 components that need to be included in every single one of these reset retreats that you do for yourself. First and foremost, you need a change of environment. Now, I'm as much of like a stay-home body as anybody out there, possibly more than most people, because I usually, like, my favorite vacation is a staycation. But in order for this retreat to work, I have to go out and get out of my normal environment, because my normal environment pulls me back into the same cycles, habits, patterns of thinking and doing that are putting me in that burnout phase or just pulling me away from being able to be creative. So change your environment, set up structured time for reflection and strategy. Do yourself a favor, and even if you just ask either an AI chatbot or ask Google or someone you know and trust for some really cool ideas on strategic questions to ponder, and then you just go do some writing. Or maybe you're not a writer, maybe you just walk around with a recorder going and you answer that question into the recording so you have a record of what you were going through mentally. And then the last step here is that you need space to just be. Not to do, not to have to run all over. Part of this is for you to just sit. When I go and sit one of these weekends away, one of the mistakes I made was I planned out pretty much the entire full weekend. And I realized very quickly that I needed to actually plan in time to just sit and watch the sunrise and not have to be journaling and not give myself a prompt to be thinking about or focusing on, but just giving myself space to just be and let things settle. And so on that note, I do recommend that wherever you decide to go for your weekend getaway, retreat, etc., do yourself a favor and pick a place that is beautiful, a place you want to hang out in, a place you want to be in. If you're a nature person, find some nature. If you're a city person, maybe go to a city that you really, really love and you haven't gotten to go check out recently. What happens when you actually take space like you need to focus on what you need to do to grow your business?
Just the locations and the atmosphere that Stephanie and her team set up were very important for me to be able to disconnect from life for a while so that I could build some creative energy. I mean, just going somewhere and there's a nice little gift basket waiting for you, and there's access to maybe a pool or just even being outdoors in new location. It was truly an experience that I would highly recommend for any business owner wanting to grow their business.
So how do you actually build your mini retreat? Well, we kind of covered this already, and since not everyone is in a position to just be able to like up and fly across the country, at a moment's notice, here's what I recommend. You could even plan a half-day CEO date with yourself. See if you can find a local spa, one that will allow you to come in and maybe has like a quiet, relax room prior to your treatment. Book the treatment so you know you're gonna have to show up at the spa for the treatment because you paid for this treatment, and then plan to spend another couple of hours just sitting and relaxing in that relaxation room. If you've got the space for it, then yeah, go ahead and find a really cool place that you wanna go visit. Maybe it's even within driving distance on Airbnb or VRBO or wherever, or even find a cool hotel that you've been wanting to check out but haven't talked yourself into just yet, and book your time to go do that and spend a weekend away. Remember that the goal here isn't so much to escape, it's to reconnect. And so plan questions for yourself. One of my favorite questions that I start with is, what question should I be asking myself right now? Because it's funny how often the brain knows the answer to that question, and that may be your spark to get you through your weekend. Just make sure you do plan time to just sit and be, not necessarily do. If you've been feeling scattered or stuck, a pause might be exactly what you need. And if you're not feeling like you can do that for yourself, you may need to look into plugging into another group or an event. We have the Growcation that we run once a year, and it is literally a working luxury vacation. It is space for you to reconnect with what you need to do to face yourself in the mirror and figure out what it is that's holding you back from growing yourself and your business. There's more information available below if you're interested in checking that out.